had mammoth, mastodon, ground sloth. They were attracted to the salt springs, the saline springs there at Big Bone Lick. Animals would go there to feed, and that's where they became prey for what we call these Paleo-Indian hunters. They were the original pioneers of Kentucky. They were the first hunters to come in to Kentucky. They developed a very, very specialized tool called the clothe point, and we know these as the clothe people. This was a very, very efficient killing point. I mean, this was made to bring down big game animals. They chose the best rocks or the best chert that they could find. It's a fine grain material. It's got like little quartz crystals in it. It will break in a predictable manner.
Now, how long would it take for a skilled craftsman to knock one of these out?
From start to finish, maybe 20 minutes. This would have been used probably with thrusting spears, possibly throwing spears. A group of hunters would have gotten together, maybe isolated a mammoth or a mastodon in one of these salt springs, and it would have taken a group effort. They probably snuck up on these animals from behind. They probably got gut shots or belly shots on them. And the way these things worked was they were on a foreshaft. And this thing would go in, and then the big spear would break off. They could then reload another point onto their spear and repeat this. Because it probably took hours for one of these animals to die.
Wow. An atlatl. Now that seemed to be a pretty efficient way to get something moving pretty fast using physics. I mean, sounds like you could really put the wallop on something with one of these.
Yes, you could. The atlatl, what it was an extension of your arm. The bow didn't come around for a long time in Kentucky. So the atlatl was the preferred hunting mechanism.
Yeah, I can imagine them having games and
sure.
and you know, cheering each other on, laughing at each other, and trying to get. And there probably some guys are really good at it.
The fact that these were buried with people, just the fact that when they laid someone to rest and they put these things with them, I think that really tells how important these things were to their daily lives. 12 to 1300 years ago, that's when the bow gets introduced into Kentucky. It totally changed the way people hunted, because if you think about it, the bow and arrow enabled a hunter to hunt in solitude. You didn't have to go out with a group anymore. And the other thing is the force and distance. An atlatl, they're throwing from 30 and 60 feet. You would have had to gotten really close to your prey to take it down. With the bow, you were afforded distance and, again, that solitude.
During that period of time, I can imagine an Indian scampering up a tree, getting on a low branch and waiting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's the vantage point.
Sure.
I mean, as we use today, we have tree stands, but I know plenty of guys who don't hunt with tree stands. They climb up a tree and wait, find a big branch and just stand out there. I can see that happening.
That would have been exactly what I would envision.
Now, during that period of time, what would they hunt?
The white-tailed deer and the wild turkey become extremely important food sources for these people.
They took every part and parcel of this animal and used it for something. Can you tell us, for an example, if they brought a deer into camp, how many things could they make out of this deer? I mean, from everything from...
You make your clothing and your shoes out of the leather. They use the antler to make arrow points. They use the bone to make needles and awls. They use the sinew as hafting material. And that's pretty much, you know, the animal. And then, of course, you've got the brains were probably used for tanning hides.
How would they preserve their meat, or did they pretty much use it as they got it? I mean,
that's another good question, Tim. If you had a really good hunt and a guy's brought back a couple of deer, some of it's processed and eaten right away, and then they would have set up drying racks, so they were making jerky.
A lot of people have this utopian vision of peace and harmony. They were out there killing each other. When I was a kid, I found a skull with a couple of these in it. Now, there was some bad business going on.
Well, think about it. The stone, the animals, the water. You're competing for these resources, so conflict did occur. And, you know, that's human nature.
Right.
Yes, the Indians were here, but who else was here? The French, the Spanish, the Dutch, the English. And these are the people that introduced, the firearms to these people. The first guns introduced to Native Americans in Kentucky probably came from the French.
Now, that had to change their game quite a bit.
Oh, sure. I would say around the mid to late 1600s here in Kentucky, they were introduced to these European firearms, but what you have to realize is that the Indian probably served as the middleman. So say you've got some stuff coming from the east or the west, a group of Native Americans that trusted the Europeans would have gone, maybe traded some of their goods for the firearms, and then the firearms were brought into the Indian groups by the Indians themselves, and then the people that probably used them were probably the higher status people in that group. So maybe the best hunter, maybe the guy that was the most important person in that group, those were the people that got to use the guns. But what I really find fascinating is that at one point you would have people living in the same village and they were carrying guns and bows and arrows. And I find that fascinating.
Now, over the next 2 weeks, we'll cover part 2 and 3 of the history of hunting in Kentucky. Next week, we'll deal with the early settlers and how lack of regulation led to the near disappearance of some animals in Kentucky. And the last part, we'll deal with bringing them back.